Imagine a situation like this. You've spent months looking at 55 plus communities, maybe even longer. You've done the tours, attended the information sessions, talked to a few residents who are all seem genuinely happy. The brochure you scoured over is beautiful and the model suite is absolutely immaculate. The lifestyle director walks you through the pickleball courts, the fitness center, and the social calendar is packed with events that you can pick and choose from and tells you about the neighbors who become lifelong friends. You think this is exactly what you've been waiting for. The lifestyle looks real, the community feels really warm, and so you go ahead. That's the marketing working exactly as intended. What the brochure doesn't show you is what that same community looks like 10 years from now. It doesn't show you what the fees are doing to your monthly budget by then, or what happens when your health changes and the maintenance free community can't support you anymore. That's what I want to talk to you about today. And I'm going to let you know the key questions to ask to ensure you're making the best fit for you. You start asking yourself after a while you've moved in, you looked at the right, were you looking at the right things before you made the decision? The research on this is consistent. The reasons people move into these communities and the reasons they end up regretting them are almost completely different from each other. And the decision criteria and the regret criteria don't match. And that may seem obvious, but nobody in the sales process is bringing or bridging that gap between them. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through what 55 plus communities actually are, what the marketing version leaves out, and why fees and governance rules catch so many buyers off guard. I'm also going to show you a hidden demographic problem built into the structure of these communities that means the lifestyle changes on you whether you want it to or not. And by the end of this, you'll have a much clearer picture of whether this type of community is right for your situation. And if it is, you'll know exactly what to look for before you commit. So let me give you the thing that surprises most buyers right up front, because it changes how you think about everything else. The fees don't stay where they start. Now, when you move into a lifestyle community, whether it's a condo style building or a freehold community with shared clubhouse, you're paying monthly fees. And typically they run anywhere from $400 to maybe $700 or even more a month. Now that covers maintenance of the grounds, shared amenities like a pool or fitness center, and whatever programming is offered. But here's what you have to ask. What has that fee been doing over the last 5 years? In older communities, fees can go up significantly. And in buildings where infrastructure is aging and a special assessment can arrive at any time. A special assessment is a one-time levy for capital repairs that a reserve fund can't cover. It might be $15,000 or $25,000, and in some cases it's been higher. That's not a worst case number. That's a real number that has landed in real people's budgets when, let's say, the roof needs replacing, or a parking structure needs structural work, or an elevator system needs an overhaul. The reserve fund is the money the community sets aside specifically for these situations. A healthy, well-funded reserve fund, you're unlikely to face an unexpected assessment. An underfunded reserve means the bill is coming and the timing is just not known at this point. And when you're running the numbers on whether a 55 plus community makes financial sense over 10 or 15-year horizon, you can't just look at the monthly fee on the day that you buy it. You need to look at the trajectory, the reserve fund health, and what the governing documents say about how assessments can be levied and approved. Those three pieces together give you a real financial picture, not the one in the brochure. That's the fee layer that you see. Now, the governance layer is its own conversation. But first, let me give you some context on where I'm coming from. And by the way, I'm a realtor, and being with RE/MAX, I have access to some of the best realtors across North America. So let's talk about adult lifestyle communities. Come up regularly when people are planning their next move in retirement. This topic is an important one when planning your next chapter. The research on this is growing. ARP has covered it. Finance Buzz has published pieces on the most common reasons retirees regret these communities, and YouTube has an entire growing genre of videos on this topic. And you know, the Villages in Florida, it's the largest 55 plus community in North America, is generating daily letters and forum posts from residents who feel locked in. The issues showing up there, the fees, the governance, the social dynamics that shift over time, those same things are showing up in other adult lifestyle communities. So let me walk you through why. Well, adult lifestyle communities come in a few different forms. And it's worth understanding the distinction because the financial and legal implications are quite different depending on which one you're looking at. The most common types are condominium adult lifestyle communities, freehold adult lifestyle communities, and the third one, life lease communities. In a condo community, you own your unit and share ownership of the common areas with other residents. The condo board manages the building and the shared spaces, setting budgets, approving spending, and levying special assessments when reserves aren't sufficient. Your monthly condo fees cover maintenance, amenities, and contributions to that reserve fund. Now, in a freehold adult lifestyle community, you own your lot and your home outright. There's a community association or management group that oversees shared amenities like a clubhouse, or maybe it's walking paths or a pool, and you pay a monthly fee to that group for those shared services. They operate with their own set of rules and governance structures that can vary significantly from one community to the next. Now, in a life lease community, which is the model fairly common here in Ontario, you don't own the unit in a traditional sense. You pay a large upfront entry fee, often 300 to 600,000 or more, depending on the community and the unit, and for the right to occupy that space for your lifetime. Now, when you leave, the entry fee is returned, sometimes with a modest adjustment for market changes, but without the same appreciation you'd expect from a property you owned outright. Each model has its own rules, its own financial structure, and its own exit implications. Understanding which type you're looking at before you get emotionally attached to a community is the starting point of any good due diligence process. And the life lease structure, is the one where the exit implications are the least understood, and in some situations, actually the most difficult. You know, I know a situation that illustrates this directly. A friend of mine who is himself a realtor was responsible for selling his grandmother's life lease unit after she moved into assisted living. And what followed was a lesson in how little control a family actually has that once the process is handed over to management. He had no say in setting the sale price, no input into any price adjustments, and no influence over how quickly the unit would be listed. And after the unit was emptied and ready to go, it took the management 2 to 3 months before the listing even went up. And he couldn't list it himself, couldn't choose the photos, and couldn't make the call on staging, even though he is a practicing realtor. And when he and his family decided they were willing to accept a lower price just to get the sale done quickly, management overruled their choice. All those decisions sat entirely with the person in charge at the management level, and the family had no recourse. And the whole time, the monthly maintenance fees kept coming on top of what they were already paying for his grandmother's assisted living costs. So that's the exit reality that the life lease brochure doesn't walk you through. Management has no financial incentive to move quickly because the monthly fees come in regardless of whether anyone is living in the unit or not. And if you're considering a life lease community, understand the exit strategy in full before you sign absolutely anything. Read exactly what the governing documents say about who controls the sale, who sets the price, who decides the listing time, and what happens to fees during a vacancy. Ask specifically what the typical turnaround time is from a unit being vacated to being listed, and from listed to sale. If those timelines aren't clearly documented, that's worth noting, because you or your family may be one day entirely at the hands of management structure that has no urgency and no financial obligation to create any. So, what all of these community types share is the same core pitch. You get the good parts of home ownership without the burden. No lawn care, no snow removal. Someone else manages the maintenance. And that part is true. But when someone else manages the maintenance, someone else also decides when it happens, how it gets done, and how the cost gets allocated. You see, you live in the community, but in most cases, you don't run it. The condo board or management group makes those calls, and the residents fund them. The rules about what you can and can't do with your unit, your guests, your pets, any modifications you want to make, those rules exist in a document you have every right to read before you buy. You know, most buyers don't read it thoroughly, and that document is where the surprises tend to live. And I'll say this clearly, the rules themselves aren't necessarily unreasonable. Most of them exist for good reasons, and they keep the community functioning well for everyone. But rules that feel theoretical when you're touring a model suite have a way of feeling really, once you're living in them, quite different. And here's something that research makes very clear. People move into 55 plus communities primarily for social reasons. The fear of isolation is the main driver. The house is too big, the work community is gone, the kids are too far away, and the idea of hundreds of neighbors at the same life stage feels like a genuine solution to something very real to them. But the regret when it happens almost never comes from the social side. It comes from the financial and autonomy side. Fees that rose faster than expected, governance decisions that felt arbitrary or beyond residents' control, and the realization that the community can adapt when health needs change and that another move is going to be necessary. You know, the decision criteria and the regret criteria are completely different things. And nobody in the sales room is connecting those dots for you. And the aging in place problem deserves a direct conversation because I think it's genuinely underweighted in how people make this decision. And adult lifestyle communities are designed for active, independent adults. They're not retirement residences and they're not long-term care facilities. They don't have on-site health support in any meaningful sense, and they're not built to provide that. So if your needs shift significantly, now whether that's mobility changes, cognitive changes, or a need for regular personal care, the community often can't adapt around you. You know, the unit might not be appropriately configured for your new reality, and the support you need won't be available on site. You'll need to transition to a retirement residence or eventually a long-term care place. And that's not a personal failure by any means. It's just how these communities are built. But it means you're not making one housing decision when you choose a 55 plus community. You're actually making two decisions. The first move gets you in, and the second move gets you out when the time comes. You know, here in Ontario, for instance, the friction costs between two owned properties are significant. Real estate commissions, legal fees, land transfer costs, moving costs, depending on your price point, that's 40 to 60,000 or more in transaction costs per move. So do that twice in a 10 to 12 year window, and you've spent a significant portion of that financial upside you expected from downsizing. And there's an emotional cost to the second move at 78 or 80 that doesn't show up in any spreadsheet. The physical and mental energy of packing up another home, letting go of a space you've settled into, rebuilding a sense of place all over again. And people can definitely manage it, but it's worth knowing you're likely signing up for it before you decide. None of this means don't do it. It means go in knowing what you're actually buying, not just what you're being sold. This is the part I want you to sit with for a moment because it's the thing that almost nobody talks about in the sales process. And I think it's most important structural reality of how these communities work over time. When you move into a 55 plus community, you don't move in alone. You move in with a cohort, a group of people at roughly the same life stage as you, typically spanning 8 to 10 years in either direction. So you move in at 67. Your neighbors might range from the late 50s to mid 70s, and everyone's in the same general chapter of life, even if the exact page is different. For the first few years, that's exactly what it looks like in the marketing. The pickleball, the card nights, the walks, the shared dinners, real friendships with people who get it because they're living the same chapter as you. Now, run that clock forward 8 to 10 years. If you moved in at 67, you're now 75 to 77. Your neighbors, at the same cohort you moved in alongside, the ones on your floor or the ones built your social life around, many of them are now in their mid to late 80s. Some have moved to memory care. Some have unfortunately passed away. And if you were on the younger end when you moved in, let's say 58 or 60, you're now in your late 60s, early 70s, and still very active. But the friends who anchored your social life in year 2 are now 75 to 80. You're different places. The things you used to do together look different now. The pickleball courts are quieter, for instance, or the social calendar has thinned. The community that was once sold as vibrant is now quietly aging in place because the people in it are aging together on the same timeline. Someone in a community forum put it exactly right. 10 years later, you're 75 and they're 85, and now it's a different situation. That cohort decay is not a management failure or a marketing failure. It's just math. The structure of everything is age-restricted community. When you buy into this community, you're not just buying a lifestyle. You're buying into a shared demographic timeline. And the lifestyle that's marketed to you has roughly 8 to 12-year window before it starts to look and feel fundamentally different from what was advertised. And exiting when the lifestyle no longer fits is often difficult or expensive. The resale market for units in older adult communities can be challenging precisely because the building is aging and the demographic is aging with it. Now, buyers looking for a vibrant lifestyle you originally purchased are going to newer communities that offer it fresh. The people still look at yours are making a different calculation entirely. Now, the people who are happiest in these communities long term are almost always the ones who went in with clear eyes about all of this. They understood the shelf life was real. They built the second move into their financial plan. And they chose a community where the exit structure was as clean as possible. If you're still seriously considering a community, and you should, because they genuinely can be the right answer for the right person in the right situation, here's what to actually look at before you commit. Start with the fee history and don't just ask what the fees are today. Ask for 5 years of monthly fee statements. Ask whether any special assessments have been levied in the past decade and for what amounts. And ask to see the most recent reserve fund study. That document will tell you whether the community is financially prepared for upcoming capital work or whether they're sitting on an unfunded reserve. Reading the governing documents, and I mean the actual bylaws and declaration, not the summary version someone hands you during a sales tour. This tells you what the condo board or management can do without a resident vote, and what they can change, and what you can change or you can't do with your unit. Rules about pets or guests or rentals and modifications are all in there. These documents can be dense, but they're the actual contract you're entering, and your lawyer should walk you through the sections that matter most. Now, if you're looking at a life lease community, understand the exit mechanics in detail before you sign. Ask who controls the sale process, who sets the price, who decides the listing timeline, and the marketing approach, and what happens to the monthly fees during a vacancy. Get those answers in writing. If the governing documents are vague on the exit terms, that's not an oversight, it's a signal. And ask about the demographic profile and the trajectory of the community. How long have most residents been there? What does the turnover look like year over year? You know, a community in its second year of operation looks and feels very different from one in its 14th year, and you're making a different bet in each of those cases. Ask specifically about aging in place and the transition path. What happens if your mobility changes significantly? Are there any on site support services? What does the process look like if you need to move to a retirement residence or long term care? And how long has that typically taken for residents who've gone through it? These aren't morbid questions. They're the questions that protect you from a decision that's very difficult to reverse. And here's the one I most strongly suggest. Find residents who have been in the community 8 to 10 years already on your own without going through the sales office. Walk the halls, introduce yourself, ask them what surprised them, what changed since they moved in, and whether they'd make the same choice again. Their answers will tell you more than any brochure, any information session, or any testimonial that the community selects for you to read. The information you need to make this decision is well and largely available for you. It's just not the information that gets front loaded in the sales process because it doesn't sell the lifestyle. You have to go looking for it deliberately, and most buyers don't do that. Now, the honest picture of 55 plus communities is not a simple one. I don't think it should be simplified. Some of these communities are genuinely excellent, well managed, financially sound, socially vibrant. They deliver something real for the people who are the right fit. And I've seen that too, and it's worth saying clearly. But a growing number of people are moving in based on the aspiration version of this decision and discovering the operational version after the fact, after the fees start doing what fees naturally do, and after the rules start mattering in ways they didn't anticipate. You know, after the community starts looking different from the one they signed up for, not because anyone broke a promise, it's because it's 10 years have passed and everyone aged together. The question I'd encourage you to sit with is not whether 55 plus communities are good or bad as a category. It's whether this specific community, with its specific fee history, specific governance structure, its demographic profile, and exit pathway, is this the right fit for where you are now and where you're realistically likely to be in 10 years? That's a harder question to answer than whether the model suite looks nice. But it's the question that protects you from making a decision that's very difficult to undo. You know, the people who do the best in these communities are almost always the ones who went in knowing all of it: the shelf life, the fee trajectory, the governance reality, and the second move. They went in anyways with clear eyes, and it worked for them. And that's the goal: going in knowing.